Okay, well, we just watched A Star is Born
At the drive-in.
at the drive-in. So, this is Barbara Streisand and Chris Christopherson. It's 1976. Um, Before I talk a lot about the background of this, what did you think?
I thought it was pretty good.
What did you think about... the reason we watched this is because this was a movie that Barbara was trying to get Elvis to do. So Elvis had played this movie. What do you think?
I don't think he would have done well in it.
Why?
Certainly he can sing better than Chris Christopherson. But I don't know, it just didn't seem like it seemed like the character's too rough.
Too rough.
For Elvis.
Yeah, maybe. All right, so before I give you too much of my opinion on this right now, so The Star is Born, this is the third version of this movie. There was a 1937 version and a 1954 version. Both of those were, the story was based on a young actress who got discovered by an older actor who was had his fame and was dealing with the sort of downward slide of fame, and started getting sort of inspired by this young girl, and then helps her out, and she becomes a big star, and he becomes sort of a nobody, and that's sort of the gist of the story. 1975, I think, Barbara Streisand and her hairdresser turning producer John Peters came up with this.
Wow.
I know, it's bizarre.
That's a transition.
Yeah, they came up with a new version of this story, but for musicians. And they envisioned Elvis in this role. Now, they had a couple other people that in mind eventually, I believe, but they really wanted Elvis. And they tracked him down while he was on tour and got a meeting. And the story that I've heard is they spent like 3 hours in a closet. Well, a famous person's closet. It's a big room.
Okay.
With Elvis, and they discussed this thing and got super excited. He was very, very excited about doing this role.
Was Colonel in there with him?
No, that was the problem. Tom Parker finds out, and
Tom Parker.
he didn't really want Elvis to do this film, and so he started making a lot of crazy demands, like Elvis is top billing, Elvis gets paid an exorbitant amount of money, all kinds of other strange things. But Elvis hadn't made a movie since 1969, an acting role, and Tom Parker really wasn't interested in his client, one of the world's leading touring star, playing a character who was in this downward destructive spiral path. And so anyway, he didn't get to do it. But as we're watching this, it's remarkably, scarily close to what we know Elvis's life was like. So Tom Parker didn't think his fans could handle this and that it would ruin his reputation. But 6 months later, after this movie came out in 1967, his former friends, bodyguards, and the people from the Memphis Mafia wrote a book called Elvis, What Happened, and basically told everything that's going on in this movie is what was going on in Elvis's life. So, would this have been a wake-up call? I don't know. Where we really watched this playing the what-if game. We don't know. I sort of feel like I'm sort of torn. I would kind of feel like if Elvis had been able to take it seriously and do this role, it would have been so intense, and I don't know if it would have been destructive or reinvigorating. I think back on Love Me Tender when he died at the end of that, and the fans lost their minds, and he just died. And now in the film like this, what would have happened if they'd seen him drinking and drugging and womanizing? And I don't know. The character actually was kind of sweet, but he had all these terrible habits, and it was a very adult film. There's a lot of language, a lot of sex, a lot of abuse,
Nudity?
nudity. Elvis would never have been in a film like this, and
Yeah, it didn't seem like it would suit him.
yeah, it really didn't. But it really was kind of written for him or about his life. I almost think when I watched this that they were writing Elvis's story. He didn't do some of the more overt things. He didn't, totally sabotage himself. But there were plenty of concerts where they were talking about he would get on stage, and he could barely stand or remember the words. It was a total train wreck. So I kind of think, and I kind of want that this thing would have turned his life around, and he would have been able to use all this destructive behavior in a way to turn his life completely around. But it's probably unlikely. He probably wasn't in the kind of shape that he needed to be to do this. So, I mentioned John Peters earlier because it's such an odd character, but John Peters went on to be a pretty successful producer. He produced the first Batman film with Michael Keaton.
Ooh.
He also is kind of a bit of a crazy person in Hollywood. He's got some crazy ideas. He's also responsible for The Wild Wild West with Will Smith and a giant mechanical spider. That was a huge bomb. But anyway, it's just kind of funny.
The Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was a good song.
Yeah. So anyway, it's interesting. It's a decent film. We don't really need to rate it. In general, I think that this was a vehicle for Barbra Streisand. That's another reason why I think Tom Parker wasn't too excited about it. This was Barbra Streisand's movie all the way. It was really to glamorize her more. But Chris Christopherson did win a Golden Globe for it.
I mean, his acting was great. His singing,
Right.
no.
But
Boyfriend can't sing.
it would have been remarkable to hear Barbara and Elvis sing together.
That would be interesting.
Because she can sing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a news thing or
No.
anything.
It gives you chills.
Yeah, and the two of them, I think she would have pushed him to some really remarkable levels. And
That would have been interesting to see them together.
I think so. Soundtrack won a Grammy. It won a bunch of awards, but the two main ones that I cared about really was that Elvis would have had another a hit on the charts with Barbara, and that he could have potentially won this Golden Globe. Who knows? We can't know, but it's just interesting to see. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is really a sort of wrap up of the movies, and
I like your jacket.
oh really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm part of his crew. My own crew. Yeah. The last film we're going to review is called This Is Elvis. And it is, it's a film that tells all about his life. And we will talk more about that when we get a chance to see it. So, any last parting remarks?
No.
All right,
Thank
then.
you.
All right, then we'll see you soon with the last of these sets of reviews. See you later.